Hey there, welcome back to the Empowered Edge, where we're unlocking your best self through optimal health, a resilient mindset, and lasting habits. I'm your host, Jenna Hostetler, and today we're talking about one of the most common, and in my opinion, most problematic pieces of advice in the weight loss world. How many times have you heard that you need to stick to 1,200 calories a day to lose weight? It's a common piece of advice that sounds simple enough, but the truth is 1,200 calories is almost never the answer, and it's setting you up to fail. The idea of 1,200 calories as the answer to weight loss is outdated, oversimplified, and quite frankly, it's going to do more harm than good, even if a dietitian created the meal plan. Today we're going to unpack the truth behind restrictive meal plans and why you don't need to live on 1,200 calories to see real, lasting results. And real quick, before we dive in, there is a guide down in the show notes that'll kickstart your weight loss process. It's called Goal Getter, and it'll show you how to create a plan for long-term health and weight loss from the inside out. So be sure to grab that before this is over. Okay, now if 1,200 or even 1,400 calorie meal plans don't actually work, why are these diets everywhere? For starters, it's simple, and in theory it should work. Cut calories, burn more than you consume, lose weight. And it can work. I mean, if you starve yourself long enough, you will eventually lose weight no matter what. And you'll feel massively unhealthy and feel like total garbage. If we live in a world where we only ate real food, we drank water, we consumed things that truly came from nature, and we were outside most of the day and were moving around all day, a 1,200 calorie meal plan would work. You wouldn't need it, but it would work. And the thing that doctors and mainstream dietitians and anyone recommending a low-calorie diet for weight loss doesn't consider is that most people are constantly consuming unnatural things that I'm not even going to call food, and so-called health foods that are increasing inflammation, they're raising blood sugar, and they are destroying our gut, all of which affect our body's ability to lose weight. So until we stop eating those things on a regular basis, talking about calories is really irrelevant. Now, I know the idea of calories in, calories out has been drilled into us, but this only has a chance of working when you're eating real food. And if you're eating real food and following the other guidelines I'm going to talk about today, then counting calories becomes unnecessary anyway. So really, to sum up what today is going to talk about, counting calories doesn't work unless you follow these 4 guidelines. And if you follow these 4 guidelines, then counting calories is unnecessary. If you are properly nourishing your body and you're active, then yes, when you exert more than you consume, you will lose weight. But this concept was hijacked by the food industry when they created low-fat health foods. And this was genius on their part because they can drastically reduce calories by eliminating fat. Then because it tastes gross, they add sugar, which we all know is highly addictive. Focusing on a certain calorie number distracts us from what truly impacts weight loss, and it gets us sucked into the world of big food. When we rely solely on calories, we end up ignoring the most crucial aspects of eating: what we're eating, when we're eating, and why we're eating. And as a dietitian, these 3 things, what, when, why, are far more important than how much. The key to real, sustainable weight loss is not eating less and suffering through it. It's about eating in a way that supports your health and fuels your body. And that is why I focus on 4 main principles of health that guide you toward a healthier weight without the calorie obsession. All right, let's talk about the 4 principles that I believe are essential for real, lasting health. These 4 principles can help you maintain a healthy weight without restrictive diets or constant counting. And if you do choose to start a diet like paleo, keto, vegetarian, or anything, these 4 principles will apply, and they will help you get better results. The first principle is simple and powerful. Eat when you're hungry. So often we ignore our body's hunger signals, either because we're trying to stick to a plan or because we're trying to wait until a set time to eat. But here's the thing. Hunger is a signal from your body that it needs fuel. It needs nutrients. And if you deprive your body of what it needs, then it's not going to be able to function properly. We need protein for DNA synthesis, wound healing, hormone creation. We need fat to build cells with strong cell walls so they're not easily penetrated by foreign invaders like viruses. There are so many thousands of things that we need protein, fat, carbs, vitamin, minerals, antioxidants, fiber for, plus hundreds of compounds that we don't even know exist yet. So if we ignore our hunger, we're not only robbing our body of what it needs to do its job, we are robbing our brain of what it needs to think clearly. And the big thing here is that when we eat when we're hungry, we're less likely to overeat. And then we're less likely to give in to temptation for foods that will set us backwards in our health goals. Now, the opposite side to principle 1 is not eating when you're not hungry. If you're eating when you're hungry, that means that by default, you're only eating when you're hungry. I don't know when I first realized how much of a food culture we live in, but it absolutely drives me crazy how we always think we need to have food around. We don't need snacks every time there's a get together, and it is not rude to say no thank you when somebody offers you something to eat. Now, I'm going to stop there because I could go on about the different ways that this creates eating habits that sets up for failure, especially children. But principle one is eat when you're hungry, which means you also don't eat if you're not hungry. A big problem with eating based on calories that violates this principle is that far too often we eat based on what our calorie intake tells us we can eat instead of eating because our body says we need to. Either we stop eating because we hit our limit for the day even if we're still hungry, or we see that we have 100 calories left, so we believe it's okay to have a low-fat, zero-calorie sweetened dessert that really tastes like garbage and is filled with factory-created non-foods that do more damage to our bodies than good. And we think this is okay because it's been drilled into us that as long as it's low calorie, it's good to eat. Which is a lie, and the food manufacturers know it's a lie, they just don't care. If principle one is eat when you're hungry, then principle two is the other half of that. Stop when you're full. This one can be really challenging for people who've grown up with a clean your plate mentality. If you currently tell your children to clean their plate, please do them a huge favor and stop. When we're constantly telling people to keep eating after they're full, we are teaching them to overeat. We're teaching them to ignore their body, and we are setting them up for obesity and health problems their whole life. Learning to stop eating when you're satisfied, not stuffed, is truly a game changer, and it takes self-discipline to be able to do this, which is a huge struggle for a lot of people. If you're eating something that is truly delicious and you can only stop eating when you're so stuffed that you feel like you'll get sick or you feel miserable, you have no control over your eating. If you really are full when there are 2 bites left on your plate and you cannot just let them be and have, heaven forbid, throw it away, you are not in control of your eating. Now, I have to say this to all the moms out there. Stop cleaning up your children's plates. It is not always wasteful to throw away food. Let me repeat that. It is not always wasteful to throw away food. Saving leftovers is great, but if you're choosing between eating leftovers when you're full and throwing them away, throw them away. It is not less wasteful to overeat and have the extra food turn to fat in your body than to throw it in the trash. You can waste it in your body or you can waste it in the trash, and it is far worse for you to waste it in your body. And of course, eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full keeps you in tune with your body. And over time, you will find that you can trust your body's signals more and more. This is a huge part of why listening to your body is so powerful, because it takes you out of diet mode and lets you build a healthy relationship with food. Not to mention the freedom that comes from being able to say no at any time around any food. Next, we'll look at possibly the most crucial principle. Eat real food. We live in a country full of processed, convenient foods that are engineered to make us crave more, which makes principle 1 and 2 darn near impossible to stick to. When we're eating food that did not exist 100 years ago, things like no sugar added vitamin water, ready to drink protein shakes, protein bars with soy protein isolate, salad dressing filled with canola oil and sugar, low-fat mayonnaise, like talk about an oxymoron. Calories are not near as much of a concern as the inflammation and cravings that come from eating these foods. I mentioned earlier that we want to eat when we're hungry so we can provide our body with the raw materials it needs to function properly, keep us free from disease, and have us energized and feeling good so we can live the life we want to live. The problem with counting calories is that only protein, fat, carbs, and alcohol contain calories. So if that's all you're focusing on, then you're missing out on an entire world of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and other natural compounds that allow us to live. And when you consider that diseases like depression, ADHD, and Alzheimer's can be fixed by reversing nutrient deficiencies, it kind of becomes a big deal that we pay attention to these nutrients. I heard a quote from a dietitian at a conference a few years back, and she said, "When you go back to nature, the food rules fall away." And I love that saying because the foods that are highly processed are the ones full of empty calories. That is, calories with no nutrients attached, usually inflammatory fats and refined carbs. And those are the foods that we can just keep eating and eating because they taste delicious and they don't fill us up for very long. But when we eat real food in the right proportions, we can trust our body to tell us when and how much to eat. And because it self-regulates, we don't need to count calories. When you eat real food, you don't need to obsess over calories because your body knows what it needs and you've learned to listen to it. So now the question becomes, how do I know what's real food? Some things are obvious, like fresh fruit, vegetables, a bag of dried beans, hamburger, but anything with a nutrition label and ingredient list can get complicated to figure out. You've probably heard the rule that if there are more than 5 ingredients, put it back on the shelf. And that never made sense to me because I have recipes that can have 10 to 20 ingredients in it if we're making a sauce or if there are a lot of herbs and spices. My rule of thumb is that if the ingredient list doesn't look like a shopping list or a recipe, don't eat it. It's easy and it's simple, and you can know that that jar of marinara sauce you just bought isn't anything different than something your great-grandma in Italy could have made. It's just more convenient to buy than to make. Eat real food, and when your body has detoxed from the chemicals and foreign substances and the low-grade poisons that shoot your cravings through the roof and make it nearly impossible to lose weight in a healthy way, you'll be able to eat when you're hungry and not be crushed by temptation every time you smell pizza and cheesy bread. And finally, the fourth principle, manage your triggers. We all experience stress, poor sleep, getting sick, losing motivation, people that drive us crazy, and getting in a funk. The question is, how do you deal with it? Our brain loves consistency, comfort, and certainty. So when an event happens in life that gets our defenses up, we revert back to old habits. Our brain searches for the safe and familiar, which is not the category that a new whole food-based diet that does take effort falls into for most people. This is the most complicated and difficult of the 4 principles, but it is the difference between yo-yo dieting that never gets you results and creating a lifestyle of repeated successes and results that last. It is essential to understand what your triggers are, whether it's stress, boredom, or emotional struggles, and develop ways to cope with those triggers that don't derail you from the one goal you keep working on, losing weight so you can prevent disease, feel energized, and have the life you want. When you manage your triggers, you get into a proactive mindset instead of a reactive mindset, and you're able to stay on top of your goals and commitments. This is why tracking what you do and what results you see is so important, because it allows you to notice your triggers and understand how they're affecting your ability to get the results you're after. No matter what, if any diet or meal plan you're on, these 4 proven principles of health will allow you to follow through and get results. Because in any diet or meal plan, and especially if you don't have one, there are always opportunities to look at the clock or to look at the numbers instead of listening to your body. There are always processed foods that follow the latest food trend, so you can be eating keto or vegan and still be eating junk food. And your triggers are never going to go away, which means until you learn to manage them, your results can only last as long as life is perfect. Good health is simple, but it's not always easy. And since the more you go back to nature, the food rules fall away, following a diet based on counting calories sets you up for failure. The more you listen to your body and the more you eat from nature, the less you need to count. This is a very brief overview of the 4 principles of health, but it's enough to get you started down the path of success, instead of wandering around in the wilderness of calorie counting that has no way out. This week, I challenge you to take one of these 4 principles and put it into practice. Maybe it's focusing on eating only when you're hungry, or maybe it's choosing more real whole foods. Whatever it is, take that first step towards a healthier, long-term way of hitting your weight loss goals. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take action and stay empowered.